Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest Mailbag podcast presented by our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions, local and trusted since 1999. If you have a need, you can pick up the phone today and get a free estimate on roofing, siding, windows, or garage at 865-524-5888 or visiting them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. I'm Eric Kane alongside Brett Hubbs and Grant Ramey, Austin Price. We got a fun show coming up. Got plenty of your questions here for the Mailbag podcast, and we'll go ahead and start with Fulmer's FUPA. A rundown of where we are with the remaining wide receivers that Tennessee has been in the mix for. Travis Smith, Ffrench, Meadows, Cunningham, and Marcus Harris. Obviously, we won't name them all, but who has fallen off and why, which ones have the staff purposely moved on from, which ones are legitimate candidates to land here on Rocky Top.
Well, they moved on from Marcus Harris a month ago because they don't want a slot. They're needing for their last wide receiver target, they're needing a kind of a long, rangy guy who can play outside. Tennessee moved on from Meadows because he's going to take so many official visits. They were going to be first. They felt like it was, long shot. So there's no point to really bring him in. If you weren't going to be one of the last, Jaime Ffrench, he told me Tennessee was third. He told others Miami was third. Tennessee was fourth. At the On 3 Elite event in Nashville. I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be shocked if Tennessee doesn't bring him in because, again, if you're second, sure, you go shoot your shot. But if you're running fourth, what are the chances that you're getting by three other teams?
Well, here's the thing, too, on Ffrench. You're fourth 48 hours after you left your camp.
Yeah, correct.
It'd be different if you were fourth and he hadn't seen you. Okay, and hadn't spent any time, but he spent the full. He was at 865 live and was a priority AP, and he's third in Tennessee's at best third or fourth. And I think that's where you got to make a decision and look at things if you're Tennessee.
Yeah, they're gonna bring the kid in from Missouri, in the weekend of the 14th. Travis Smith will be here the weekend of the 21st. Tennessee will be the last school he sees. He commits on July 13th. Tennessee, Georgia there. It's a coin flip. There's a lot of pressure to stay in state. However you talk to him over in Nashville, if it was just apples to apples, I think it's Tennessee. But, again, that in-state pressure, it can lean on a kid. And that's where I think Georgia kind of right now has, if I was handicapping it, I would say 51-49 Georgia. Ahead of official visits. He's at Georgia this weekend, Tennessee the last weekend.
Yeah, I think that one's going to be fascinating to see where he's at mentally after the Georgia visit.
Yep.
How much do they swing there? Do they get a big enough lead that they could even get him to shut it down? Do they get a big enough lead that they can hang on through the rest of the official visits? You like Tennessee being last as long as you get to the last visit, But we'll see. George McIntyre's working that one like crazy. And then AP, I don't have any idea where Cunningham is. That one feels like he's probably staying in state.
I would be shocked if he leaves the state of Mississippi.
Okay.
Want to ask about linebacker recruiting as well. Said he hadn't seen as much about the position group outside of the article that was released about a week ago. Any updates on the names at linebacker?
No, it's pretty much what Matt wrote. To me, that's the one position where they're kind of figuring it out. They had a coaching change there with BJ leaving and William Ainge coming in, and I think there is a learning curve for Coach Ainge coming to the SEC and recruiting in this league. Again, not to say he can't do it, but I think again it's just a different pace. Again, I just kind of roll off what Matt wrote a week ago.
All right, let's go to MarketSquareStreaker. What or who made you want to cover college sports for a living, and did you grow up a Tennessee fan?
I don't know what made me want to cover college sports for a living. I do remember, I love doing what I'm about to do too. I remember being a kid, probably high school, and I watched a much younger Brent Hubbs on a 7 o'clock sports broadcast talk about the Julian Battle recruitment. Julian Battle had signed 2 letters of intent, and Hubbs had this. It was like, I'm pretty sure it was on a 7 o'clock news broadcast with Rick Russo, and I just started. I mean, I love covering recruiting. I mean, I can remember, or not covering, but following recruiting. I remember sitting in James Clausen's. We were in his bedroom when watching Derek Williams announced to Penn State, because at that point, I'm sure Hubbs knew going into the announcement he was going to Penn State, but no, we didn't. So like as young kids, we were like enthralled with what's this kid going to do. I mean, Derek Williams just kind of carried himself with like that, that cool vibe, and I just loved recruiting. I started covering recruiting grassroots like. When I was writing for the Daily Times, I would literally get on whitepages.com. I didn't have this Rolodex that we all have now. It's not a Rolodex, but an outlet to get it. Like we had at Rivals or at On3 or whatever. And I just got on whitepages.com and I called every Stevens in Flower Mound, Texas. And finally, the last one, I think there were 17, which is ironic because I think he wore 17. Nick Stevens picked up. And that's how it kind of started for me. And, I just love sports in general. But for me, that's how it started.
Grant, how'd you get started?
I was obsessed with sports as a kid. And, yes, I was raised in Neyland Stadium, Section Y, row 52, seats 7 and 8. And I loved having the Knoxville News Sentinel in my hand when we went to games, and you'd open it up and there'd be a page in the middle and have the graphics with the rosters and the helmets. I thought that was the coolest thing. I had News Sentinels. I had News Sentinel sports fronts taped to my bedroom walls when I was a kid. I was sleeping next to a mugshot of John Adams, if you can believe that. I do remember there was one summer class where Mr. Brent Hubbs came and talked to us at UT, and
great. This is so great.
It was. I remember it was me and Paul Thorntonberry and some others. And as soon as he got done talking, it was like a bread liner in the Great Depression. People lining up to beg Hubbs for a job, which I think actually worked for a couple of people. But I just love sports. I watched Sports Center on a loop back when it was a 30-minute recording, and it was the same thing, and I would just watch it over and over and over. I would read the paper. I would read, if I had to read a book, it was going to be a sports biography. But I got to college at UT, and I never cared about school. I never tried that hard in school. All I wanted to do was play sports and worry about sports. But I wrote a paper in an English class about Babe Ruth calling his shot in the 32 World Series, and it was like 10 pages, and it took forever. And I got a really good grade on it, and I really enjoyed doing it. So I thought, man, if I could find something like that I actually enjoyed doing, I should do that. And I ended up dropping off a resume. I didn't have anything on my resume at a job fair at UT, and got a part-time gig at the News Sentinel, doing agate pages and baseball pages and putting box scores on there and all that stuff. So that's where it started. And for some reason, it's continued.
Hey, before we get going into Hubbs's story, Grant, you'll love this. So earlier this week, I got a text from this 901 number, speaking of Paul, and he was like, and it's like, I'm on a group chain, and it's like, hey, can we get some coverage for this event? It's going to be like this combine thing out in Memphis. And I'm like, who was on this? I click on it, and there's a bunch of Rivals guys on there, some On3 guys on there. And Paul Fortenberry's on this group text. And I said, oh, this is fantastic. I was like, Paul, I respond back in the group, Paul, can you cover this for us? And all these people started calling Paul about players. He was like, hey, man, because I'm getting blown up over here. I said, this is fantastic. All right, Hubbard, go.
Well, when I started, there was no electronic typewriters. We didn't have tape recording devices.
Yeah, there was chisel and stone.
Exactly. That's how old I am in this deal. I actually went to college to be a TV producer. My goal when I went to college was to direct the Final Four, and I did an internship with Mike Keith and got the bug of wanting to know stuff first. And recruiting was not an easy outlet to do. But you didn't have to have a ton of talent to cover recruiting. You just had to be willing to continue to call people and work, and a lot of what AP is talking about, find phone numbers and just start randomly calling kids and trying to figure out what was going on there. And I could do that. I was willing to do that. I was willing to stay at the radio station till, 9, 10 o'clock at night calling people. And, it was, for me, it became a bit of a high to know something before somebody else did. And that was kind of my deal. I was like, hey, I know some stuff before everybody else did. And that was a cool vibe for me. And I also decided that it was a lot better than, some other kind of real job. Right. And so that's why I got hooked. I got hooked through Mike Keith and radio is what got me going that way. If I don't do that internship with him, I have no idea what career path I go. It's certainly not the one that I've been on for the last 30 years for sure.
Hubs was trading telegrams with Walter Camp, comparing players, trying to figure out where these kids were going, what train they were going to be on.
That's exactly right. We didn't meet them at the airport. We met them at the train station for interviews.
Sheesh. I was obsessed with newspapers growing up. I would read the Standard Banner, shout out Standard Banner, Citizens Tribune, Knoxville News Sentinel. I was just obsessed with bylines, and I always thought that was really, really cool. I always thought that it'd be really, really cool to see my name in a byline in a newspaper. And so I always like writing in that regard. Obviously, I always like sports. And then I started just doing a little bit more. I remember when I started covering Tennessee a little bit for the radio station, Hubs told me I should call every radio station in the Vol Network umbrella and tell them that I would do practice reports for them. And because I was broke and I needed money. And so I was like, that's a really good idea. So I sat down and I called like 50 radio stations one time. And 2 of them said, yeah, man, we'll use you, but we probably can't pay you. So I did that for a couple of radio stations for a couple of fall camps and all that. But that was kind of my introduction to Brent Hubs, couple, back in 2017, 18, 19 era. All right, we'll move on. Let's go to Grad 05. Favorite Clausen, Leak, Banks, Ainge, Schaefer era story. That was the time that I was in high school. Or that was the time that I was at Tennessee.
Who are the 4 again?
Clausen, Leak, Banks, Ainge, and Schaefer.
Well, I mean, interviewing CJ Leak after he lost the job was, that was that was kind of a wild deal because Tennessee made him available, which was kind of bizarre. They didn't make the freshmen available because they were freshmen, but CJ Leak could talk about not being the starter while you couldn't talk to the 2 that were going to play, which was kind of a bizarre deal. Was a mite strange. To me, Casey Clausen is always, and I told him this several years ago. I said, as time passes, you are going to become a much more popular player than you ever were when you were at Tennessee. And I think now, there was a thread on the general's quarters on Wednesday about top 5 quarterbacks or top 4 quarterbacks of all time, and people were like, where does he fit in just because of his record and the success he had? But he was a guy that people just had a hard time getting their hands around because he was different, right? It was spiked hair, California cool. He kind of mumbled in every interview that he did. He didn't really like doing media. He wasn't a big media guy. He didn't really enjoy doing that. I went with him for a story I did the summer before his senior, or the fall of his senior year, I guess it was, or maybe it was spring before his senior year. We went to West Valley Middle School, and he went to speak to kids and he went and sat in the lunchroom and ate lunch with kids is what he did. And I just kind of tagged along to write a story. There was no, you didn't have the iPhone. You weren't shooting video and taking pictures and all that stuff. It was just a written story. And I walk in with him, and he goes to the school office, and they have all this stuff laid out for him to sign. And he just politely looked at him. And he said, "Where are the kids? I'm here to see the kids." And bypassed all of that. He was polite, but bypassed that and went to the lunchroom and said, "If we have time at the end, then we'll do pictures or whatever in here, but I need to see the kids." And he was always didn't understand adults wanting his autograph, but he would always make time for kids. And as it's gotten further away from his time at Tennessee, I think the adults have a greater appreciation for him. And I think he was one of the best, grittiest game day guys that I've ever covered. He was not the best quarterback, but he was one of the grittiest guys that I ever covered. And I think he, in a lot of ways, was misunderstood by a lot of fans at the time. But now those fans really appreciate what he did for Tennessee.
I mean, he was a winner, first and foremost. Like the road record, all that stuff, winning in Gainesville, the 5 overtime game at Alabama, that dive for the first down pylon there in Alabama, all that stuff. And little did you know, probably when you told him that the valley that Tennessee football is about to go through over the next, however many number of years, whatever years those were. The winning stands out more than anything. The road record, winning in Gainesville, twice? Probably his only 2 trips there, I guess. That would make sense. But, I mean, if you win at a high level, especially where Tennessee football went after him, you're going to be remembered as a winner. I do think as time goes on, that'll continue. Because people will still talk about him winning in Gainesville and having the road record that he had. Ainge and Schaefer, I guess I was in high school when those guys were here. But watching those guys when they were freshmen, don't shake your head.
No, can't help it. I'm shaking myself at myself. I'm so old, but go ahead.
Just watching those guys try to figure it out early in the season. I guess the coaching staff too try to figure out who they were going to go with, how they were going to pick between those 2 guys. The different styles they obviously played with completely different games was very, very interesting to watch at the time as it was happening and as it was unfolding.
I remember I was sitting at like a doctor's office waiting room or something. I mean, I was young. I mean, that's when I was in like middle school. And I remember it was either, I want to say it was Sports Illustrated, but it would probably make more sense if it was like Football Time in Tennessee Magazine or something. But I remember reading an article and it was Fulmer and he was talking about his quarterbacks and like, it's like, yeah, most teams don't want 2 quarterbacks. We think both these guys are winners. We can play and we're excited about it. I remember sitting then and there. I'm like, you got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. And then later that year, I went to the Florida game and I'm like, okay, that's Tennessee's quarterback. Brent Schaefer and Eric Ainge. I remember that. Yeah, the 2 freshman quarterbacks. I remember polar opposites.
I remember Schaefer. We didn't. That was the year Phillip, we couldn't watch a scrimmage AP because they were freshmen. So you didn't. He was trying to limit how much access you got to see of those guys in fall camp. But you would hear people come out talking about, Brent Schaefer's just different. He's just doing stuff that Tennessee hasn't had at quarterback in a long time. And so you kind of thought, okay, this thing's going to end up being Schaefer when it's all said and done. And then in the Florida game, it was very obvious it was going to be Eric Ainge. And but Schaefer created all the fall camp buzz that year. It was not the Ainge buzz. It was all of the fall camp buzz was around stuff Brent Schaefer was doing with his legs.
Yeah, and I mean, you go back. I mean, those guys were for a good portion of the season, really, they kind of, had their moments, right? Like, Schaefer had a couple of nice plays at Ole Miss that year. I mean, that was it. It was a kind of a bounce back and forth, and so Ainge finally just took it and ran with it. I thought both those guys, definitely had some electric vibes to them. But for me, I even when he played. I loved Casey Clausen, and I think it's neat. I've gotten to know him pretty well the last 10, 15 years, and he's when you get him on the phone, man, you better settle in. I mean, he wants to run the full gamut of everything, and I enjoy that. I mean, we were driving around California one day, and I talked to him on the phone about some stuff. And my wife's like, who was that again? Because we were on the phone for 50 minutes. And I was like, Casey Clausen. Just go, oh, okay. And he's just a good dude. And, Rick, another good dude.
Yeah.
Really good dude.
Yeah, good people. James Banks had as much talent as anybody that's come through here. He just had zero focus. I mean, he could do whatever he wanted to do. I mean, they went to Mississippi State and won with him at quarterback. I mean, he about won at Georgia at quarterback. Didn't know what he was doing. He just couldn't dial it in. If he could have dialed it in, it would have been interesting to see what James Banks would have done in a football career.
James Banks, the one play that sticks out to me, I was a student. It was 03. I think it was 03. And it was the season opener against Fresno State. And he made this tippy-toe catch down the away sideline now. It was the home sideline then, going towards the north end. Just one of those, Casey throws just kind of a fade, 25, 30 yards down the field. And I was just like, man, that was ridiculous, And so, James Banks at the end of the day, man, he wanted to follow in Eric Cain's footsteps and play Carson Newman.
I remember he ended his career at Carson Newman. He was the biggest decoy in the South Atlantic Conference. He opened so many things up for Reggie Hubbard on the other side. Boy, was he the biggest decoy ever in the Ken Sparks era.
My last thing on this question, I'll let go. I think two of the best plays I've seen from a quarterback came from that group of guys. Eric Ainge threw an out to Robert Meacham in Athens, Georgia, in the 51-40 whatever game.
51-33.
A third and 9 coming off his own goal line, out cut to Meacham that he dropped absolutely in a bucket. That really sealed the game. If they don't complete that and they got a punt, I'm not sure Tennessee can stop Georgia there. It's the best throw. I know he had throws in the Florida game, but that throw was the best skilled throw I've seen Eric Ainge make. And Casey Clausen threw a fade to Kelly Washington against LSU in 01 in Knoxville on 3rd and 10 when Rohan Davey was hot and John Chavis could not stop LSU's. I think LSU had 300 yards offense in the fourth quarter or something crazy like that. Tennessee had to make a play there, and he threw a fade that was literally over Washington's shoulder with a toe tap. Kelly didn't have to do great footwork, but it was perfectly thrown. There was no way to defend it. And it was as good of a pressure throw as I've seen those two. As I've seen any quarterback make. Those two guys made two terrific sideline throws in those games to put those two games away. Sorry, Eric Cain. Memory suddenly, every now and then a hamster rattles around in the head and something comes out.
It's May, man. That's the Tom Ford. It's May. We got plenty more questions to get into, so let's take a short break, get a word from Exterior Home Solutions, and we'll get back into our mailbag portion of the show.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
Big time shout out to Exterior Home Solutions, proud sponsors of the Volquest podcast. And if you have a need, pick up that phone today. Give them a call, 865-524-5888, or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Got a lot of questions to get back into. Do want to give a shout out and some well wishes to Suzanne Williams Carruthers. She is, I know I just butchered that last name. I'm so sorry. It is Carruthers. There we go. Big time Tennessee baseball fan. Big time friend of the Rob Lewis family. Missed a step in Hoover going down and watching Tennessee playing, and it looks like she broke her ankle. So I want to give a shout out and hopefully some well wishes there. Big time season ticket holder for Tennessee baseball, and hope you are doing better, Susan. All right, let's get back into iHeartVols. Grant Ramey, this looks like a good question for you to answer. What fashion trend would you most like to see go away from college athletics? Which are you glad that are gone, and which would you like to come back? The poster says, for me, I could do without the 27 different colors of basketball shoes per team, especially the pink and the green.
Well, I got bad news. That's not going anywhere. That's only going to get more and more. I don't know, worse, I guess, if you don't like it. It's the number of shoe variations that are out there and colors of shoes is nothing compared to what it used to be. Kids are taking advantage of it. I'm fine with it. The fashion trend, I'm fine with whatever's going on right now. When I was in school, it was the 2010-ish years when the shorts in college basketball went down to the socks, and they looked like
the Tony Harris pants.
They were wearing pajamas or something on the court. I don't know. I'm kind of sick of this is asked about college sports, but professional sports like baseball, the NFL, they went with Nike, and now they've been Nike-fied or whatever the word is, where they have 17 different alternates, and you don't know sometimes who's playing or whatever. NBA teams as well. especially in the playoffs. That's my old man yelling at cloud. I need some professional teams to stick with kind of their normal stuff that we're used to.
Big fan of the new baseball pants?
No, I'm not a fan of anything MLB has done this year or with the City Connects, really, but that's a different story. Just give me the normal stuff.
Star player.
Right. Let the college kids wear the different variations of uniforms. I'm fine with that. Just give me my pro sports back. That's my only take a fashion trend, but it's not even like I said about college athletics.
Big time fan of black cleats, guys?
Yes. I like variants though. I like variants. Sometimes I want to wear white.
I have no reasoning to answer any fashion questions, so I abstain from this whole line of questioning. Right, AP?
Are you a big fan of stirrups in baseball?
Yes, sure. But I think the baseball pants should go over the knee, not above the knee. I think football pants should go over the knee as well. I don't think we should be wearing bicycle shorts for football pants that stop mid-thigh.
TBVol7 says there seems to be less JuCo recruiting year by year as teams learn to navigate the transfer portal. How much longer until it disappears and becomes just a lower level of competition? And does this say more prevalent in a sport like baseball, AP?
Probably does stay more prevalent in baseball. But it definitely is going down in football. I don't know if it ever disappears, but I do think that like you see the big schools go to the JuCo ranks less frequently now than they have at any point ever.
I think the other thing too is it's really hard not to be academically eligible coming out of high school. So I don't think you have as many guys who are JuCo bound for academic reasons as you've had in the past. And so your talent pool in general in the JuCo ranks is probably not as high as it used to be because good players are not having to go to JuCo for a year because block scheduling, early signups for the clearinghouse, guidance counselors at the high school level knowing what they're doing, understanding it, kids taking high school courses in the 8th grade. It's a lot easier to get eligible and be an eligible high school athlete coming out than it ever was. And I think that has limited some of the numbers in JuCos. And then obviously the transfer portal. Are you going to take a guy who's played 2 years, at a Power 5 school against Power 5 competition? Are you going to take a JuCo player who's got 2 years of eligibility that you're not sure how he translates at this level? The safer way is the Power 5 way.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the portal has eliminated it because of exactly that, because you have a different kind of brand of JuCo in terms of lower levels of competition and groups of 5 schools. And I feel sorry for those coaching staffs that at that level you want to get really good players, but you also don't want to get players that are so great that you're going to get your roster rated every year. But that feels like where it's going, and I don't know where JuCo fits in with that, because it feels like that becomes irrelevant because you have a almost like a different kind of reorganization of the farm system a little bit in terms of where you're going to get guys to call them up, I guess.
I think JuCo, in terms of baseball, is always going to be a thing. You look at Tennessee's roster; they get a couple JuCo guys every single year. So, and that's been with the transfer portal as well. Robin, Aaron Combs, just to name a few that are currently.
Marcus Phillips.
Yeah, Marcus Phillips, just a couple of contributors who are on the roster right now. Let's go rapid fire here, AP. Swagger12 says he's got a lot of them, so we'll move through them quick. Where does Tennessee stand with the tight end Brame?
I would say 51-49 Oregon. I think Tennessee's very much in this one. Oregon is, you do that, Hubs. I want you to do this on every one of these. So I think 51-49. I do think Tennessee has a shot there. Very much so.
Go ahead, sorry.
That's it.
Okay. Wide receiver Tennessee has best chance of landing right now, T. Smith or Cunningham?
Travis Smith.
Outside of Sanders, Moore, and Matthews, what other linemen is Tennessee in good shape with?
Sanders, Moore, and Matthews. I don't know if good shape. I mean, Tennessee's in it still with Dontrell Glover. Tennessee's in it with Jacoby Ward. Tennessee's in it for, Juan Gaston. But again, I would say Tennessee's also, I wouldn't call Tennessee the favorite there, but they're definitely. I mean, it's not like that they're. If any of those kids pick Tennessee, I don't think I would go, oh wow, that's a surprise.
Best chance to land: Jared Smith, Isaiah Gibson, or Christian Gass, or any others.
Oh, I'd probably go Christian Gass or Jared Smith.
And then here are the percentage portions of the question. Give me a percentage for each of these prospects. Charles House,
62.3.
Jalen Williams,
I'd go less than 50.
Brandon Caesar.
I don't know that kid well enough, to be honest with you, to give you a percentage. I mean, if he doesn't go to Ohio State, and right now I don't feel like he's going to, I think Tennessee's got a fairly decent shot here.
Bryce Jenkins,
64.5.
Caleb Williams,
43.6.
Amir Leonard Charles.
They're not really doing anything with him.
And then Darian Smith.
I'd go 30%. I mean, again.
That was fun. Anybody watching Hubs through that entire thing had a nice little chuckle.
That segment, that segment was like, I'm going to really date myself here. Card Sharks, the game show. You remember that? They had all the cards listed. You go higher or lower. That was
there you go.
I don't remember that. Shocker, right? Blue Sky Vol. Brent, we'll go to you on this one. I'm curious to hear what you guys think that UT is doing especially well in recruiting, football recruiting, and what you suggest that they do that they aren't presently doing. So what do they do well, and what's something they could do to be maybe even better?
Well, I mean, I think they've done a good job of getting guys on campus. I think they're doing a better job of getting guys here for unofficial visits. You look at where they're at in the offensive line pool, the number of players that they've recruited there, I think is a deeper pool than they've had in the past. I still think they can go in some positions with even a larger pool in terms of bringing official visitors in. But I mean, I think they're doing a good job with relationships for the most part. Recruiting is always evolving, right? And I think the key that you have to do, AP, is you have to understand what a kid's looking for. Understanding your challenges and is it NIL? Is it not NIL? For some guys, it's all about NIL. For some, it's not. I mean, you better know. You just have to know very early on what the factors are that you're dealing with. I think that's something that you can always improve. I don't think Tennessee's failing in that regard in any way, shape, or form, AP. It's just there's so many variables out there now that can change. I mean, used to it was, all right, you got to get mama, right? And you offer a little playing time and okay, we're good to go. But now there's so much other stuff involved that you better be really good with all that stuff, and including your early evaluations. I do think the staff in some spots have done a good job with some early evals, which has helped them get in on some kids, not just this year, but in previous years as well.
Yeah, again, I think be more diligent recruiters. This league is, it's like jumping into the water with a bunch of piranhas. But they do a great job of being genuine. I think, in talking to some kids at the On3 Elite down in Nashville, and I was not talking about Tennessee in general. I was like, why? I thought, you were rumored for this school for so long. What happened there? And a few recruits were just like, I just didn't, my parents didn't feel like it was genuine. My parents didn't feel like, that they felt like it was just phony. And I agreed. And that's kind of why me and that school went in a different direction. And I think this staff does a really good job of just kind of being themselves. And, the Josh Heupel you see at the junior day is the Josh Heupel you see on the unofficial visit. 865 live event is the Josh Heupel you see on the official visit, is the Josh Heupel you see when you get here to play for him. Like, I don't think he changes. I think Glenn Ellerby's the same way. I think Rodney Garner is the same, like, the whole way through. Like, I mean, he doesn't, he doesn't like, put on this facade. I mean, what you see is what you get. And I think that resonates with certain players. It doesn't resonate with everybody. Some people, still want to get, chase the helmet logo and chase the NIL bag and other things. But, with kids that are looking for a certain thing, I think Tennessee resonates really, really well.
Lfvol wants to know, any chance Tennessee gets Jordan Young as a safety? He wasn't at 865 Live, right?
No, and that one's going in a totally different direction. Like Tennessee's basically, they moved in a different direction, and Michigan's become the third team. It was Florida State, Clemson, and Tennessee. Now it's Florida State, Clemson, Michigan for him. Tennessee, he has been third on Tennessee's safety board. Tennessee loves the kid from Hawaii. They love Tim Merritt from Alabama. Matt will have something with Tim Merritt in the coming days leading into his official visit. So, no, I think, again, where they were in February when we were over there to North Carolina to see all those kids, and then where things were in April, where things are now, all different spots. So, no, that one's, it's kind of like Marcus Harris. Tennessee was recruiting him until they said, we don't really need a slot. We need an outside guy. So, like, we're just, Marcus, you go and get recruited by Oregon and Texas and all those schools, and we'll go see if we can land Travis Smith. So, like, again, like, it morphs and changes. And sometimes it's the school, sometimes it's the kid. I mean, like, Babalola, he cut Tennessee, whereas Tennessee's cut a few of these other kids as far as cut them loose as far as recruiting.
You got a couple here from Lick My Vols 14. We'll start with the recruiting one. Over under 2.5. It's a screen name, man. I didn't write it. Over under 2.5. David Sanders, Jamie
French. Family
French.
show, Eric. It's a family show.
David Sanders, Jamie French, Jalen Matthews, Jared Smith, or Travis Smith.
Over 2.5.
2.5.
I'll go under there.
Okay. Top 10 linemen since 2009. I'm not going to say that we have to name top 10 right here, but let's just throw some names out there.
Top 10 offensive linemen?
Offensive linemen, defensive
linemen. It says linemen, so I would assume offensive linemen. The first two that came to mind, Brent, were obviously Trey Smith recently, but Juwan James, first-round pick. Who else would you add to that mix?
Darnell Wright, Cade Mays.
Yeah.
Darnell Wright, first-round pick.
Shoot, I'm trying to think. I think guys that played in the league. I mean, you got that Zach Fulton. Who's the other guard on that?
Stone.
Yeah,
James Stone.
James Stone.
His voicemail. Jeez, Lord, they'll scar you for life.
Rank your favorite lineman from that infamous Dooley recruiting class.
2012. Nobody and nobody. Great job, Dooley.
What important?
Moron.
Any other linemen that come to mind since 2009?
I'm old. I don't remember all those guys. I'm sure I've done a disservice to some guys leaving them off, but I don't know right now. I mean, there were some young guys who had to play early. They threw Fulton and Juwan James and those guys out there early. I mean, what the late Aaron Douglas did as a freshman, undersized for a year at Tennessee, and I know that was the whole Dooley, all that stuff was a disaster when he wanted to leave. But what he did as a freshman at Tennessee at 270 pounds or whatever he was playing at was pretty remarkable. That the 1 year with Lane. I mean, you go back and look at that offensive line, and you had the Sullins twins, you got Aaron Douglas out there, and I mean they put themselves in a position to win a lot of games. And Montario Hardesty made them look better in the backfield. I mean, there are a couple of guys there that played way over their head at the point in time where they were in their lives as a football player.
Top 10 linemen that threaten to quit and get their way and not to quit. I can name those. I won't name names, but you know who you are.
McClendon, Chris Scott. I've got a list pulled up here. Juwan James already been mentioned. Zach Fulton already been mentioned. Trey Smith. Yeah, there was a couple of years where Tennessee did not have an offensive line drafted.
What year did Chris Scott graduate? I felt like he was. What year did we start this from? It was from when?
09. Chris Scott was a 2010 draft pick.
So he played in 09 was his last year.
Yeah. Well, there's Luke Stalker, former Titan great. Am I right?
Got Luke Stalker's commitment at the K's Ice Cream in Jefferson City.
Great place.
Yeah, put my kids in some raspberry sherbet while I was interviewing Luke Stalker coming home from the lake.
In 15 years from now, I'll say I got Chaz Lanier when I was walking through the line and riding Daredevil Falls at Dollywood.
Before the drop.
Before the drop, exactly.
Hubs, rank your favorite Volquest employees since 2009. Top 10.
Has there even been 10?
Plead the fifth. Plead the fifth.
Yeah, do that. Here we go. Ready. Here we go. Chris Love.
All right. This one here is for Grant Ramey from Sam Smith 2233. Hello, Mr. Ramey. Enjoy your baseball coverage.
For me.
It literally says, "Hello, Mr. Ramey. You're the true baseball intellect."
You know what Sam Smith's doing?
Do you expect the Golden Eagles from Hattiesburg to hold Billy Oldham until Saturday and throw Niko Mazza on Friday, essentially holding their ace until Saturday to face Tennessee? I could very easily see that for sure because if memory serves me right, I haven't gone and looked it up. I think they did that last year. But yes, holding their ace to Saturday because you got to beat Tennessee twice essentially to win this regional. So I could see that happening. Will Tennessee go Stamos and then see what the score is when it's time to pull him, or do you think they go Zander? I would assume this is on Friday. At this time, I don't see Tennessee messing with its starting rotation because Tony Vitello's never done that going into a regional since he's been here at Tennessee, so I don't think that's going to change. Plus, again, it's one game at a time, but you switch things up this weekend, then you're kind of out of sorts for supers, right? So I would expect Chris Stamos to get the nod on Friday. Is there any need to worry about the Hoosiers, or is this a Tennessee Southern Miss best of 2 out of 3? Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Indiana. They've very much underachieved. They're probably the most balanced team of the 3 outside of Tennessee in this regional. But, Northern Kentucky can't pitch, but boy, they can hit, at least on paper. You got Southern Miss. It's a really, really good ball club. Indiana on paper is just not very impressive whatsoever. So I think it'd be Tennessee against Southern Miss in 2 out of 3 to answer your question. We'll get to a couple more here. What will Tennessee have to do on the field the next 2 to 3 years, wins-wise, or college football playoff berths to recruit on a more national level and win more of these big boy recruiting battles?
Just continue to show you're there. I mean, 10-2, nice. Last year went 8-4. And then you won a bowl game. I think you got to get back to 10-2. You got to be back there in the mix. You got to be a team that's in the college football playoff. You're in the CFP the next couple of years. I think it helps you sell the program even more. I mean, so much of what Georgia's doing is just based off of their recent success. I mean, they've always been able to recruit. They've always been good, but now they just kind of they truly just kind of roll the balls out and kids go, okay. They're where Alabama was, and Alabama's still there to a degree. Again, I will say this. Tennessee can beat Alabama this fall. A lot of teams can beat Alabama going forward. They're not going to be they'll lose once every 3 or 4 years in the SEC, Alabama, in my opinion. But they're still going to be really good. And they're still going to be a team that's running, conversation for the CFP. So, I mean, like the whole notion that they're just going to fall off the map like some fans are letting on is, to me, I don't buy into that at all.
And we'll end on this one. Basketball question from Volunteer at 87. What's the biggest strength of next year's basketball team based on the 2023 stats and attributes?
I saw a Ron Slay quote on Twitter. I think he was doing a radio appearance, maybe in Knoxville, and he said, I think the quote was, veteran guys tipped the scale last year, and maybe talent guys tipped the scale this year. And I thought that was a kind of a good way to look at it. Like it's going to be tough replacing 3 fifth-year seniors, but you did go out and get a Chaz Lanier and a Darlin Stone-Dubar and an Igor Milicic, and Chaz and D Stone are two of the most efficient scorers returning in college basketball, so they don't need many possessions to score. I think that's a big deal. Igor, he shot 149 times from the three-point line, playing in one of the slowest offenses in college basketball last year, and he averaged 8.5 rebounds. So I think Tennessee coaches are excited about his ability to shoot it and go rebound it, especially in a higher paced offense, more tempo, more possessions, more shots, more rebounding opportunities, more everything. So I think scoring is going to have to be there. Defense is going to be there because that's Rick Barnes, and this is what they're going to do. They've been a top 5 Ken Palm defense X number of years in a row, it feels like. It's just a matter of who's going to score it, who's going to do it consistently, how they spread the wealth on that end of the floor. You got a really good point guard, a senior in Zakai Ziegler. Jaime Mashak, obviously veteran coming back. It's going to be these new guys in this transfer class, and they're excited about Felix Okpara and the defense he plays around the rim. But it's going to be, how does Chaz translate? How does Darlingstone translate? And how does Ivor translate? And how consistently can they score?
I'm going to be fascinated. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ever.
I'm going to be fascinated to see what the rotation of this thing looks like, in terms of minutes and who's starting,
who's setting the bench.
Yeah, I think the minutes and how minutes shake out with this group is going to be really, really interesting to watch. I mean, you take Zakai out of the equation because Grant, he's going to play 30 plus. What does it look like after that? I think is going to make for a really interesting November, early December as they tinker around with the lineup to figure out sort of what fits them best. I mean, is Gainey a bench guy? Is Gainey a starting guy? Where's Cam at in this deal? Where do all the transfers factor in? I mean, you talk about the transfer from Ohio State, then you got Estrella in there, and they're just how all those pieces sort out. I think are going to make this a very interesting non-conference slate for this basketball team.
Because they haven't had to overhaul something like this. Like they've just kind of been plugging in holes the last couple of years in terms of, you knew Santi was there, you knew Josiah was there, you knew Zakai was there, Jaime, the list goes on. And now it feels like they had, 7 open scholarship spots from last year's roster to next season. So it's going to be interesting because it's so overhauled, it's so new, there's so many new faces. There's talent, a lot of talent on paper. It's just how's it look on the floor and how's it all fit together.
Volunteered 87 actually had 3 questions. I thought they were all 3 basketball, but 2 more will go quick. Do we ever see Urban Meyer coaching college football again? Brent, my answer is no.
No.
Yeah. And then last one, Volquest tinfoil hats, or did the selection committee actually predict an upset in the Greenville regional so they could send Chase Burns back to Knoxville? Feels like a bit of a stretch to me. If my memory serves me right, Coastal Carolina or Eastern Carolina, I think it's Eastern Carolina.
East Carolina.
Yeah, East Carolina, the 16th seed there. They lost one of their best pitchers. They're kind of limping in a regional play, so it's very much possible. Plus, Wake Forest lacks consistency, but I mean they can play with anybody in the country, in my opinion. So
one good weekend. You have one good weekend.
Yeah.
You can move on. If you have one bad weekend, if you're Tennessee, like Notre Dame 2 years ago, you can be sitting at home. So
did the committee actually predict an upset? I wouldn't go that far, but
they said the path. They said
as we've been talking about in our group chat, Volquest group chat, and as we knew back in the month of March, the NCAA selection committee was either going to make Wake Forest the 2 in the Knoxville regional, or Brent, they were going to make it possible that these 2 teams square off in super regional play, just because the NCAA loves storylines, and that's fine. But also, you don't have to be lazy and give Tennessee Southern Miss yet again, because we just kind of had that last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're looking for storylines. I mean, I think you're looking. I think that you look where this thing's been. I mean, isn't Vanderbilt going to Clemson?
Yes.
Isn't that a isn't there a Tim Corbin tie with an assistant coach who's a head coach?
Yeah.
I mean,
and you got Texas A&M.
Yeah, they love
Georgia Tech.
You have 5. I think you have 5 ACC hosts, and in all 5 of those regionals, an SEC team is the number 2 seed. So
yeah, I mean, you're looking for storylines because you're looking for ratings, you're looking for interest in regional play, obviously, and then you're looking for some storylines in the super regional, and I think you see that every year with the NCAA and with the selection committee. I think you do it more in baseball than you do in other sports because you're trying to create some interest this weekend in regional play. And they're trying to continue to grow the sport. So I think it's by design.
It's going to be fun. All that and more coverage over at VolQuest.com. Tennessee and Northern Kentucky square off at 7 o'clock on Friday, and then we'll see what happens from there. But tons of recruiting stuff from 865 Live and the On3 Elite Series. Tons of football notes as Tennessee's well on into the offseason. Workout plans, and, of course, Tennessee basketball getting that final puzzle piece to the big picture here on Rocky Top and Chaz Lanier. We got tons of stuff happening over at VolQuest.com and on the General's Quarters right now. Big thank you to Exterior Home Solutions for being the presenting sponsor of this show. If you need windows, siding, roofing, a garage, contact Exterior Home Solutions today, 865-524-5888, or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. For Brent Hubbs, Grant Ramey, Austin Price, I am Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for listening to us here on the Volquest Mailbag Podcast.